we continue with our coverage of the appearance in court today of the ANC Secretary-General Ace Magashule and what happened outside of court. Now, all of this has deep roots and a deep history. You might want to know, for example, where did the name Ace come from for Magashule? It's a name from his abilities on the football field. Someone who was also nicknamed because of his abilities on the football field was a man known for a while as Terror. You probably know him as Mosioua Lekota. He's currently the leader of the Congress of the People, but for a long time was chair of the ANC, has a long history in the UDF before that, and a long history in the Free State as well. Mr. Lekota, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time today. You've known Ace Magashule since what, the late 1970s, the early 1980s?
No, I must confess that I only got to know of Ace. I didn't know him. I knew of him when I came back from Robben Island after my first stint in jail.
And what did you know about him at the time? For a long time, you at one point were the Premier of the Free State, of course. He was someone who was angling for power in the Free State in the ANC at the same time.
Yeah, but let me be fair to you and the listeners. I was first a member of the South African Student Organization, SASO, under the leadership of Steve Biko, Bani Pijana, and people like that. That was the late 60s, beginning of the 70s. I later became one of the leaders of the South African Student Organization and got arrested in 74 and went to Robben Island for at least 8 years, 3 months. When I came back, it was 8 years, 3 months. That was the first time when I came back from there. We then formed, I didn't know Ace at that time at all. And then we formed the South African Student Organization in 1983. More or less thereabouts, when 84, thereabouts, when we had the South, when we had the United Democratic Front. I sometimes heard of him. He was living somewhere in Hillbrow with some youngsters and all of that. But I never met him. I never really knew him. Then I went back to Robben Island. Well, then we formed the United Democratic Front. That was after I came from Robben Island. And I began to hear more of him when I was in detention and he was involved with this Winnie Mandela young people in Soweto and all of that. But I never really met him. And then I went back to jail, and I came back. And when I came back, he was rumored to be with somewhat associated with the Winnie Mandela Youth Club and all of that. When I really got to know him was when I came to the Free State, and I was appointed by the party, by the ANC, as the Premier of the Free State. At this time, he was now involved with the Northern Free State, and I came from KZN because I'd been working for the ANC there for a long, long time. And then when we went to form the government and united the Free State, I became the first Premier of the Free State. I think Matosa became the chairperson of the ANC in the Free State. And when I composed my cabinet, among others, I included him on the insistence of some of the comrades that came from the north. But I didn't know much about him, so I composed that. That's where the beginnings of our knowing each other were there.
I mean, in some ways it seemed that you found him quite difficult as an MEC. I mean, there was a time when you were actually removed to the Free State. I remember, I think you won a court order allowing you to come back. That was quite a difficult time for the Free State.
Well, first of all, I must say that it was a bit of a rough ride because a fair number of those young people wanted to tell me how to run the province, and I was the premier of the province, and I had to underline to them that I carried the responsibility of my decisions, and I could not, therefore, be told by somebody what to do. I mean, I had to do the things as I saw fit and so on. And whilst Magashule had agreed to appoint him in the cabinet and all of that, there were some bit of tension of that nature. And he was I had appointed him the MEC for Economic Affairs, Development of the Free State. And not long after, as I was going on, then I discovered that I got the information that he was abusing public funds. And in fact, when I checked, I found that that was actually the situation. And I insisted that he must explain to me what has he been doing. We had a decision that the FNB would be the bank for the Free State government. Now he was taking the money out of his account and taking it to another bank, and then taking it out of that bank in hard cash, and then it was disappearing, and he couldn't explain to me now what did he do with this money. And I took a very firm position about that because I could not be indifferent to public funds disappearing like that. And I removed him from the cabinet. There was people like Vax Maekiso and others who were very unhappy about this. But the ultimate responsibility of neglecting disappearance of public funds when you are a premier of a province is that meant that I would have to carry the responsibility of that, and I refused to do that. And it led to the situation in which finally the African National Congress, some of the leaders of the ANC, recommended that I should be sent to the Senate, and I took over from Kobi Kotsi as the interim president of the Senate, and left to the Free State. But I want everybody. I want the ANC. I want the Free State leadership and all of that. That this individual was a danger to the future of the party, because to abuse public funds in that way could only mean that the ANC was going to end up in a mess, and the government and so. But somebody else was appointed. I think it was Mrs. Wingidi Reko, who was appointed to be then the premier. And I went to the Cape, to Parliament as the chairperson, as the president of the Senate. And I worked with Nguga and the others, and we then recommended the formation of the Council of Provinces. And I became the first chairperson of the Council of Provinces. It was a short stint, but it was one which showed to me very clearly that we had a very dicey situation in Magashule.
And Mr. Lekota, I mean, that history is so interesting, but at the same time, I mean, you had an intimate view of what was happening within the ANC when then, he's now former President Jacob Zuma was coming up. You will remember what happened at Polokwane. You'll remember very clearly the crowds outside events supporting Zuma outside his court appearances. Many people, I think myself included, watching Ace Magashule in court today and reminded of those times. There are huge similarities.
Yes, indeed. I must say that one of the... Well, subsequent to that, I became the national chairperson of the ANC. And Zuma Zuma at this time was in the leadership of the ANC, and he became the deputy president to Comrade Thabo Mbeki. But you see, there were serious problems that were arising for the ANC. One of those was the fact that Zuma had a rape case, and some of us took the position that it was wrong that the leadership of the ANC should support people who were charged with criminal cases. And I was certainly very, very strong against this kind of thing. And I made it clear that it didn't make sense to me that we as a liberation movement, a party that had struggled and we had gone to prison for matters of moral high standing, and now we were supporting people who were stealing public funds. We were supporting people that were even in the national parliament involved and charged with bribery, and then now rape. And I couldn't see how we could stand the test if we supported people that were committing criminal cases. And what example were we giving to society, to the youth of our country? And I just simply did not agree with this. I made it quite clear that I could not associate myself with that. And as a matter of fact, it's among those kind of things that undermined my commitment, my interest in the ANC, and I just couldn't find it in my conscience.
I remember those moments very clearly in 2008. I must ask, I mean, some people are seeing this as the beginning of Ace Magashule actually getting stronger politically, that he will use the court case against him politically, like Zuma did. Do you see it like that?
They're saying what?
They're suggesting that Ace Magashule will be able to use these criminal charges that have been preferred against him politically to increase his political power. Do you see it like that? I mean, they're suggesting that Zuma was able to use the fact that he was in court as a way to become president of the country. They're suggesting Magashule will be able to use the charges against him to increase his political power. Do you see it like that?
Well, when I look at how the ANC is dilly-dallying on the question of corruption, why it is it's uncertain whether corruption is bad or not bad, and you can see now how even Magashule is mobilizing so many young people, taking them to Bloemfontein. I hate that. I don't know that this is true, but I hate that buses that came from Limpopo were about 30 buses and what. I mean, if you take young people to go and support something that is morally reprehensible, something which is contrary to that which we were taught as we grew up, what are you saying to the young people? You are saying that this is virtue. This is what they must live to do. This is what they must uphold. Why does any liberation organization, why does any leadership of society say to the young people, this is a good example to follow? If you don't want to teach them to grow up to do those things which generations of the people of this country have said were unacceptable. And so these large numbers that were today, who were very proud, with the colors of the ANC, very proud that they support this, they are happy about that and so on. What you are saying to them is, this is the kind of, we want you to be like this, this man, to follow this, to do this kind of thing. And the result can only be one if you do that.
Mosioua Lekota, I really appreciate the time. Thank you. The leader of the Congress of the People, former Premier of the Free State, also a former chair of the ANC. I could go on with the list of your positions that you played in our society. Sir, thank you for your time on Newsfeed today.